The earth also was corrupt before God, and the earth was filled with violence. And God looked upon the earth, and behold, it was corrupt. For all flesh is corrupted his way upon the earth. And God said unto Noah, the end of all flesh is come before me, for the earth is filled with violence through them, and behold, I will destroy them with the earth. Make thee an ark of gopher wood. Rooms shalt thou make in the ark, and shalt pitch it within and without with pitch. And this is the fashion which thou shalt make of it. The length of the ark shall be 300 cubits, the breadth of it 50 cubits, and the height of it 30 cubits. A window shalt thou make to the ark, and in a cubit shalt thou finish it above. And the door of the ark shalt thou set in the side thereof, with lower, second, and third stories shalt thou make it. And behold, I, even I, do bring a flood of waters upon the earth, to destroy all flesh, wherein is the breath of life, from under heaven, and everything that is in the earth shall die. But with thee I will establish my covenant, and thou shalt come into the ark, thou and thy sons and thy wife and thy sons' wives with thee. That's a fairly optimistic twist on the story, because not only is it Noah, but he gets to save his whole family and down a couple of generations. And so that's a good thing to think about. It's like, as things, I had this client, and she had a very hard upbringing, I would say. Not a lot of encouragement, to say the least. Let's say a fair bit of discouragement. And she had a son, and what was really interesting about her in relationship to her son is that all the things that she could have learned to do to him, given her extensive experience with being made as miserable as possible by someone who was hell-bent on bringing her to her knees, she refused to do to her son. Right? She learned the opposite lesson from all her misery and torment, which was not to move that forward down the generations. And so the idea here is that if you walk properly and aim properly and act properly, if you walk with God in the manner that we've been discussing, is that perhaps that isn't only good for you, perhaps it's also the thing that will save your family, and then by implication perhaps save society, because that's exactly what happens with Noah, right? First it's him, and then it's his family, but everything else goes. And so by saving himself, by acting properly, and by saving his family, he actually saves the world. It's interesting, like the most profound people that I've read who've meditated deeply on the problem, say, of totalitarian catastrophe, and I would put Alexander Solzhenitsyn at the top of that list. His entire corpus, 3 volumes, 700 pages long each, in tiny type, is a long scream about the absolute necessity of individual honesty and ethical behavior as the only bulwark against totalitarian catastrophe. And I've read many writers who've attempted to diagnose the problems of the 20th century. And I think Solzhenitsyn, he came to the same conclusions that Viktor Frankl came to as a consequence of his experiences in the Nazi concentration camps. And Frankl, I'm also an admirer of Frankl, but Solzhenitsyn takes it to an entire different level of profundity and makes an extraordinarily strong case that not only do societies deteriorate because the people within the societies become individually corrupt, but that the only way to stave that off is for the individuals within that society to reject that corruption in the confines of their own personal lives. And he tells endless stories of people that he met in the Gulag, in the work camps, in the death camps in the Soviet Union, of people, and this is what he learned, of people who were so incredibly tough that even under conditions, the most possible extreme conditions, there wasn't a chance that they were going to step off that straight and narrow line. There was nothing the authorities could do to move them. And just watching that was enough to transform Solzhenitsyn, because of course one of the things he wondered was, after spending a good amount of time in the work camps, was, well, just exactly how did I get here? And it wasn't, well, it was Hitler's fault and it was Stalin's fault, although it was definitely the fault of both of them. For Solzhenitsyn, it was also his fault, because he was playing the same game. He just wasn't as good at it. And of every living thing of all flesh, 2 of every sort shall thou bring into the ark to keep them alive with thee. They shall be male and female. And so there's another message in this story, which is that it isn't only Noah and his family and human society that's dependent on Noah's appropriate actions in the world. It's the entire living planet. And in an era of excessive and extreme and genuinely disingenuous environmental catastrophizing, that's something to consider very seriously. Think, perhaps there's nothing better that you can do for everything, all things considered, including those things that are outside the confines of human society, than to get your act together and align yourself properly along all of the dimensions of your being, from the tiniest microcosm to the ultimate macrocosm. And that's the way that all of being is redeemed. That's what the story suggests. And we read it, you know, as cynical modern people, we read it as if it was written by primitive people who thought that it was really the case that someone could build a boat and put 2 of every kind into it and thereby save the world. It's embarrassing to see things interpreted in a manner that shallow, especially by people who don't have ignorance as a justification. You know, these stories have to appeal to everyone, right? And there's lots of people in the world who aren't very bright. And so they tend to take things concretely, like a child would take things concretely if you read them a story. And this story can be taken concretely. But it has to be, because these stories have to be for everyone. But if you're sophisticated, that doesn't mean that you should dismiss it as if it's written for a child. It's maybe you have the obligation to look a bit deeper and think for a moment that it wouldn't have been conserved for these many thousands of years if there wasn't something more to it than a casual intellectual dismissal would indicate. And take thou unto thee of all food that is eaten, and thou shalt gather it to thee, and it shall be food for thee and for them. Thus did Noah, according to all that God commanded him, so did he. And the Lord said unto Noah, Come thou and all thy house into the ark, for thee I have seen righteous before me in this generation. Of every clean beast thou shalt take to thee by 7s, the male and his female, and of beasts that are clean, but not clean, by 2, the male and his female. And of fowls also of the air by 7s, the male and the female, to keep seed alive upon the face of all the earth. For yet 7 days I will cause it to rain upon the earth, 40 days and 40 nights, and every living substance that I have made will I destroy from off the face of the earth. And Noah did according unto all that the Lord commanded him. And Noah was 600 years old when the flood of waters was upon the earth. And Noah went in, and his sons and his wife and his sons' wives with him, into the ark, because of the waters of the flood, of clean beasts and of beasts that are not clean, and of fowls and of everything that creepeth upon the earth. They went in two unto Noah into the ark, the male and the female, as God had commanded Noah. And it came to pass after 7 days that the waters of the flood were upon the earth. In the 600th year of Noah's life, in the 2nd month, the 17th day of the month, the same day, were all the fountains of the great deep broken up, and the windows of heaven were opened, and the rain was upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights. In the selfsame day entered Noah and Shem and Ham and Japheth, the sons of Noah, and Noah's wife, and the 3 wives of his sons with them, into the ark. They and every beast after his kind, and all of the cattle after their kind, and every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth after his kind, and every fowl after his kind, every bird of every sort. And they went unto Noah into the ark, 2 and 2 of all flesh, wherein is the breath of life. That makes Noah the ultimate shepherd, right? Shepherd of all things. Tender of the garden and shepherd of all things. That's a hell of a role. And maybe that's the one that keeps you afloat during the flood. And they that went in male and female of all flesh, as God had commanded him, and the Lord shut him in. And the flood was 40 days upon the earth, and the waters increased, and bare up the ark, and it was lift up above the earth, and the waters prevailed, and were increased greatly upon the earth. 15 cubits upward did the waters prevail, and the mountains were covered. And all flesh died that moved upon the earth, both of fowl and of cattle and of beast, and of every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth, and every man. And all in whose nostrils was the breath of life, of all that was in the dry land, died. And every living substance was destroyed, which was upon the face of the earth, both man and cattle, and the creeping things, and the fowl of the heaven. And they were destroyed from the earth, and Noah only remained alive, and they that were with him in the ark. And the waters prevailed upon the earth 150 days. And God remembered Noah and every living thing and all the cattle that was with him in the ark. And God made a wind to pass over the earth, and the waters receded. The fountains also of the deep and the windows of heaven were stopped, and the rain from heaven was restrained, and the waters returned from off the earth continually. And after the end of the 150 days, the waters were abated. And the ark rested in the 7th month, on the 17th day of the month, upon the mountains of Ararat. And the waters decreased continually until the 10th month. In the 10th month, on the 1st day of the month, were the tops of the mountains seen. And it came to pass at the end of 40 days that Noah opened the window of the ark which he had made, and he sent forth a raven, which went to and fro until the waters were dried up from off the earth. And he also sent forth a dove from him to see if the waters were abated from off the face of the ground. But the dove found no rest for the sole of her foot, and she returned unto him in the ark, for the waters were on the face of the whole earth. Then he put forth his hand and took her and pulled her in unto him into the ark. And he stayed yet another 7 days. And again he sent forth the dove out of the ark. And the dove came into him in the evening, and lo, in her mouth was an olive leaf plucked off. So Noah knew that the waters were abated from off the earth. And he stayed there yet another 7 days, and sent forth the dove, which returned not again unto him any more. And it came to pass in the 601st year, in the 1st month, the 1st day of the month, the waters were dried up from off the earth. And Noah removed the covering of the ark, and looked up, and behold, the face of the ground was dry. And in the 2nd month, on the 7th and 20th day of the month, was the earth dried. And God spake unto Noah, saying, Go forth of the ark, thou and thy wife and thy sons' wives with thee. And bring forth with thee every living thing that is with thee, of all flesh, both of fowl and of cattle, and of every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth, that they may breed abundantly in the earth, and be fruitful, and multiply upon the earth. And Noah went forth, and his sons and his wife and his sons' wives with him, every beast, creeping thing, every fowl, and whatsoever creepeth upon the earth after their kinds went forth out of the ark. And Noah builded an altar unto the Lord, and took of every clean beast and of every clean fowl, and offered burnt offerings on the altar. Immediate return to the sacrificial motif. And the Lord smelled a sweet savor, and that's Noah's proper sacrifice. And the Lord said into his heart, I will not again curse the ground any more for man's sake, for the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth. Neither will I again smite any more every living thing, as I have done, while the earth remaineth, seed time and harvest, and cold and heat, and summer and winter, and day and night shall not cease. And God blessed Noah and his sons, and said unto them, Be fruitful and multiply, and replenish the earth. And the fear of you and the dread of you shall be upon every beast of the earth, and upon every fowl of the air, upon all that moveth upon the earth, upon all the fishes of the sea. Into your hand are they delivered.